We're just a little bit more than 90 minutes away from the president's speech to the nation tonight, announcing his plan to bring home 33,000 U.S. troops, the so-called surge forces in Afghanistan, by the end of next summer, 2012. Let's talk a little bit more about this with CNN contributor General Wesley Clark. He's the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. General Clark, thanks as usual for coming in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Sure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what I see as something that's a little strange, and maybe you can explain this to me. I tweeted about this earlier in the day. Right now, there are 100,000 U.S. troops on the ground in Afghanistan. There are 40,000 additional NATO forces on the ground in Afghanistan. They're backed up by 300,000 Afghan military and police forces. That's nearly 500,000 so-called good guys. They're fighting probably 100 or so, if that, Al Queda terrorists in Afghanistan, and maybe at the most 25,000 Taliban fighters. What's wrong with this picture? 500,000 troops versus maybe 25,000 Taliban and Al Queda. Explain why the U.S. and the NATO allies need that many forces on the ground.
Well, in a counterinsurgency strategy, you have to have overwhelming military superiority on the ground. You have to protect the population, so you have to be everywhere, even if the insurgents aren't there. And they're constantly moving around and seeking weaknesses in wherever you are, they're liable to strike. And because you're trying to establish the fact that you have legitimacy, you can protect people, so they'll provide you information, any weakness that you have then backfires against your strategy.
So do you think this strategy that the president will unveil, and we basically know what it's going to be later tonight, makes sense?
Well, I think it does in the larger sense, Wolf, in this sense. We went there because of Al Queda. We've done a pretty darn good job against Al Queda. We got Osama bin Laden. We've taken out almost all their top leadership, except al-Zawahiri. He's now the target. We probably have information we captured that will make it even more difficult for him to operate in the future. There have been no large-scale terrorist attacks in some time. So we always ask this question, how do we know we've won the war on terror? And the answer was, well, there's not going to be a surrender on the deck of the USS Missouri, and so it's basically going to fade away. It hasn't faded away, but the threat has been controlled, and we've certainly brought justice to the people who struck the United States.
Because General, there are a lot more Al Qaeda terrorists roaming around Yemen right now than in all of Afghanistan. The U.S. doesn't have 100,000 troops on the ground in Yemen.
Exactly. And so I think strategically it makes a lot of sense to try to redeploy out of Afghanistan as soon as possible. But you have to make your own exit strategy. And how to do that is you've got to find a way to bridge the gap between Hamid Karzai and the Taliban. There need to be some kind of negotiations that lead to some stability. You don't want a complete slaughter when you leave. We've always said we were leaving, so the idea that they're going to wait us out, sure, they've always been able to wait us out. We never expected to be there forever, and they know that. But they're going to want something out of this, too. So we have to be smart in the negotiations. We have to build up some Afghan capability to take care of itself, and we've got to use our leverage on the ground to work Pakistan and India to do the best we can. But ultimately, we're going to be out of there. Our interest in there is no Al Qaeda.
What I hear you saying is that you don't have confidence that those 300,000 Afghan military and police forces who have largely been trained by the U.S. and the NATO allies, even 10 years into this operation, they don't have the wherewithal to deal with 25,000 Taliban and maybe 100 Al Qaeda.
Well, first of all, we don't know the full extent of the Taliban force. So you say 25,000?
That's what the
sure.
They say maybe 25. No, some say as few as 5,000.
Sure, but maybe there are another 10,000, 20,000 supporters out there who aren't exactly Taliban, but they're friendly families they stay with and provide them logistic support. A lot of our troops are logistics troops over there. You have to remember that. Secondly, these Afghan troops, 300,000, they weren't all trained in 2001. Some of these are new people on the battlefield, and to build a force, especially a force under stress in combat when you're taking losses, is a really tough thing to do. So, no, I don't have confidence in those forces right now, but I do have confidence in our training methodologies. And I do believe that we can create stronger forces. Ultimately, it depends on their confidence in Hamid Karzai and his government, and that's got to be built.
General Clark, as usual, thank you very much.
Thank you.